good place to focus your efforts if you've got the proper temperament for it, and a terrible place to get involved if you get frightened by markets that decline and get excited when stock markets go up. I don't mean to sound particularly critical. I mean, I know that people have emotions. It may be a subsidiary of a subsidiary in some way, but I really don't know anything about it. I'm sorry. That may be a good thing. I do know something about hot dogs, so sorry.
And we do have a lot of companies in Chicago, Warren, through Marmon. And that's been a great opportunity where we've accumulated a variety of excellent companies under that portfolio. But as you noted, I don't believe Portillo's falls under that.
No, I look at the financial statements of about perhaps 50 or 60 of our companies every month. But in the case of Marmon, for example, Marmon itself owns over 100 companies, and it was the creature of, it was created by Jay Pritzker and his brother Bob, and it was a remarkable company when we bought it, but it was highly diversified.
All right, this question comes from Jessica Poon, who says, you've long been a strong believer in the American tailwind and the resilience of the United States, and history has proven you correct. Today, the U.S. appears to be undergoing significant and potentially revolutionary changes. Some investors are now questioning the concept of American exceptionalism. In your view, are investors being overly pessimistic about the U.S. economy, or is the country indeed entering a period of fundamental change that requires a reassessment from a new perspective?
Well, I would say that Jessica, who I believe is, in some senses, she is the step-granddaughter of one of our managers that I mentioned in the annual report, may not be the same. But in any event, America's been in significant and revolutionary changing, really ever since it was developed. I mentioned that, we started out as an agricultural society. We started out as a society with high promises, and we didn't deliver on it very well. We said all men were created equal, and then we wrote a constitution and said black could count it as 3/5, and in Article 2 you'll find male pronouns used 20 times and no female pronouns used. So, it took till 1920, I should say, until the 19th Amendment was passed, saying, oh yeah, we promised the women this back in 1776, and now we'll do something about it. And then we didn't do something about it for a long time. So we're always in the process of change. We'll always find all kinds of things to criticize in the country, but the luckiest day in my life was the day I was born. I was born in the United States, and at the time, about 3% of all the births in the world were taking place in the United States. And I'd like to say that I had something to do, sent messages out to my parents, for God's sakes, move to the United States before I was born or anything. But I was just lucky. And I was lucky to be born male, I was lucky to be born white, I was like all kinds of things. But it's good. If you don't think the United States has changed since I was born in 1930, we've gone through all kinds of things. And we've gone through great recessions, we've gone through world wars, we've gone through the development of an atomic bomb that we never dreamt of. At the time I was of cocoa. And then cocoa took a run in 1955. And I had just moved to New York. And there was a provision in the new tax code that if you were in 2 or more companies, and you did certain things, and you'd been in them for 5 years, and you got out of one of them, that there would be no capital gains tax on my full inventory gains. And tax rates were around 48%, maybe 52%. And so there was this huge profit because the cocoa had gone up in price, but that made it terrible for them in selling rock chocolate bits, because the price of retail of the chocolate bits did not match what was going on at wholesale. Something almost identical has been happening in the chocolate business.
Hi, Mr. Buffett. My name is Daniel, and I'm from Tenafly, New Jersey. First of all, I just want to say how grateful I am for getting the opportunity to ask you a question. When it comes to your principles of investing, you often talk about how important it is to be patient. Has there ever been a situation in your investing career where breaking that principle and acting fast has benefited you? Thank you.
Well, that's a good question, and there are times when you have to act fast. In fact, we made a great deal of money because we're willing to act faster than anybody around. Jessica Toombs is, I think she's the stepdaughter or step-granddaughter of Ben Rosner, a manager of ours. And in 1966, I got a call from a fellow named Steiner in New York, and he said, I represent Mrs. Annenberg. And there were actually 9 Annenberg sisters, I believe, before Laura Annenberg came along as the son. But he said, we have a business we'd like to sell you. So I called Charlie up, and I got a few details, and it sounded very interesting. And Charlie and I went back to the office of Will Feldsteiner in New York, who was a marvelous guy. Never met him since, but he was handling things for somebody like that, and they want to sell you something for $6 million that's got $2 million in cash and a couple million in real estate and is making $2 million a year. You don't want to be patient then. You want to be patient and waiting to get the occasional call. My phone will ring sometime, with something that, wakes me up. I may be sleeping in there or something. But you just never know when it'll happen, and that's what makes it fun. I mean, so patience. It's a combination of patience and a willingness to do something that afternoon if it comes to it. You don't want to be patient about acting on deals that make sense, and you don't want to be very patient with people that are talking to you about things that will never happen. So it's not a constant asset. It's not a constant liability to be patient. Greg,
Well, Warren, I was going to add, as you're being patient, I happen to know, and I think that goes for our Ajit also and all our managers, very patient when we're looking at opportunities, and as you touched on, we want to act quickly, but while we're being patient, never underestimate the amount of reading and work that's being done to be prepared to act quickly. Because we do know, be it equities, but I would include a variety of private companies, that when the opportunity presents itself, we're ready to act. And that's a large part of being patient, is using it to be prepared.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't come in anything like an even flow. I mean, the most uneven sort of activity you could get into. And the main thing you have to do is you have to be willing to act.
This question is from Flavio Montenegro, a shareholder from Guatemala. A couple of years ago in this meeting, Mr. Jain outlined the significant challenges GEICO faced in modernizing and integrating its IT systems. It was also mentioned that competitors were ahead in their pricing strategies because of the use of telematics. Today, Geico's turnaround is evident through strong pricing and operational improvements. Could you provide more details on the specific actions taken under Todd's leadership and how those changes will help sustain a long-term competitive advantage in the coming years?
Yeah, Todd has done a great job for us in terms of turning around the operations. When he took over, there were two major issues that Geico was behind its competitors on. Firstly, the term Warren used, we all have been using, is matching rate to risk. And secondly, telematics. We were at the bottom of the list and so far as telematics is concerned about 5-6 years ago.
$1 million, which on a $50 million investment is, 20 for 1 1/4. So it, now that takes years to develop. But the interesting thing is, the auto insurance policy, which didn't even exist 100 years ago, create something that in a very, very, very big playing field, it would be very, very hard to develop anything like that. I don't think you can develop the people around it, let alone the capital position and the history and everything else. And the answer, of course, is that it does take a long, long time, and it takes getting around you a small cadre of people, which then spreads out somewhat. But where you've got mutual trust, where people do more than their share. And I've been around a lot of businesses over the years, and by nature, I'm somewhat critical of everything. I mean, I'm looking for what's wrong in things we're doing, and it's really, it's a pretty wonderful life. Anything, Greg, you want to add or subtract from that?
Nothing to subtract, but I would always just say it couldn't be more, as I've said in the past, more humbled and honored, obviously, to be in this role. But to have actually been part of Berkshire for more, it's now 25 plus years, had the opportunity to be part of Berkshire and to work with you and Ajit and our board, but many other people in our company. And as you touched on, when you find something like that, like Berkshire that's so special, you fall in love with it, and it becomes just what you want to do every day, and it's just an incredible opportunity. So thank you.
Mark Bonnke and Helen Friedrichsen in Rapid City, South Dakota. As the US dollar quickly loses value in relation to other foreign currencies in 2025, is Berkshire Hathaway taking steps to minimize this currency risk and its impact on quarterly and annual earnings? If so, please explain. And I'll just add from Mary Cheng, another shareholder, Berkshire currently borrows in Japanese yen to offset its currency risk and its Japanese stock investments. In the future, will you invest in foreign currency denominated assets unhedged?
Yeah, well, we always have, pretty much. The Japanese situation is different because we do intend to stay so long with that position, and the funding situation is so cheap that we essentially have attempted to some degree to match purchases against yen denominated funding. But that's not a policy of ours. In fact, that's the first time we've done that, and we've owned lots of securities in foreign currency. So we do nothing in terms of the question about its impact on quarterly and annual earnings. We don't do anything based on its impact on quarterly and annual earnings. I mean, there's never been a board meeting I can remember where the conversation I had with Charlie where I say, if we do this, our annual earnings will be this, you know, and therefore we ought to, whether it's accounting or whether anything, we just, you know, the numerables are not to be what it will be. What counts is where we are 5, 10, or 20 years from now, and if you start focusing on what number you're going to produce, you will quickly get tempted, at least based on the experience I've seen from viewing 20 companies. You will get so you will, one way or another, play around with the numbers, and sometimes seriously play around with the numbers. And I've seen people that you know, I trust them in all kinds of other ways, but they regard playing around with numbers is perfectly okay. Of stocks in which to invest. And he knew a lot about bonds, he knew a lot about real estate, he knew a lot about a lot of things, but he said he thought he could make a lot of money out of being in foreign currency. But we've done it once. It's not inconceivable we would do it again, but it's unlikely. But there could be things happen in the United States that would make us want to own a lot of other currencies. And I suppose if we made some very large investment, European country or some, there might be a situation where we could do a lot of financing in their currency, but it's not it was something that just was sort of obvious to do in the Japanese situation where we had the party had a very, very low carrying cost, and we felt very good about the income we'd be receiving from these securities, and if the present condition, which it never does, but prevailed for decades and decades, we would probably keep doing the same sort of thing, but things change in the world too, so I'll take that as a prediction.
Good morning, Warren and Greg, Ajit. Thank you so much for hosting this event. Good to be here. My name is Dashboy Mundifir, and I'm from the great country of Mongolia. A little bit background about my country. Mongolia is an emerging market and landlocked country sandwiched between Russia and China. But we are rich in history and minerals and have full democracy and growing economy. Last week, we hosted our second annual Mongolia Investor Conference in New York to attract investors like yourself. I know you meet and give advice informally to government leaders such as South Korea, China, and India. What advice would you give to government business leaders of emerging markets like Mongolia to attract institutional investors like yourself? It'd be great if you have long-term plans for exposure to emerging markets as a hedge or an opportunistic investment. Lastly, I welcome all of you to Mongolia, and my country folks would be very happy if you can make it to our economic forum this July.
Peter Shen in New Jersey. It's for Mr. Buffett and Mr. Jain. In recent years, large private equity firms like Blackstone, Apollo, and KKR have aggressively expanded into insurance, raising permanent capital, managing float, and aiming to replicate the model that Berkshire pioneered decades ago. Given that these firms are now directly competing for insurance assets, often using higher leverage and more aggressive investment strategies, how do you view their impact on Berkshire's insurance operations and underwriting discipline? Do you believe that the private equity model poses risks to policyholders in the broader financial system? And has this competition made it more challenging for Berkshire to find and price insurance opportunities safely and profitably today?
My name is Marie. I'm from Melrose, Massachusetts. Thank you for the time today. As a young person interested in investing like myself, I would love to hear your insights, Mr. Buffett. What were some pivotal lessons you learned early in your career, and what advice do you have for young investors who are looking to develop their investment philosophy? Thank you.
Well, those are good questions. I wish I'd thought of myself earlier in my life. Who you associate with is just enormously important. And don't expect that you'll make every decision right on that. I mean, that you are going to go into, you're going to have your life progress in the general direction of the people that you work with, that you admire, that become your friends. I mentioned a few fellows that died in the last couple of years ago. All of those people were people that we were working together on something 1/10,000th the size of Berkshire. I mean, they'd be the kind of people you choose. They're people that make you want to be better than you are, and you want to hang out with people that are better than you are, and that you feel are better than you are, because you're going to go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and that's something you learn, and of course you learn it late in life. It's hard to really appreciate how important some of those factors are until you get much older. But when you've got people around you like Tom Murphy and just name him Sandy Gottesman and Scott, and you're just going to live a better life than you do if you just go out and look at someone who's making a lot of money and decide you're going to try and copy him or something of the sort. So I would try to be associated with smart people too, where I could learn a lot from them. And I would try to look for something that I would do if I didn't need the money. I mean, what you're really looking for in life is something where you've got a job that you hold if you didn't need the money. And I bet Joe got it for a very, very long time. In fact, all the fellows I named had it. And they also, every one of those ones I named, they always did more than their share. And they never saw more than their share of the credit. They just behaved as the way you'd like anybody you work with. And when you find them, you treasure them. And when you don't find them, you still keep doing whatever causes you to eat, or enables you to eat. But you don't give up on looking around, and you'll find people do wonderful things for you. I mentioned earlier, going down to Geico and knocking on the door when the door was locked. I mean, who knows what was behind that door, what went in, but in 10 minutes I found that I had a man that was going to be just wonderfully helpful to me. And of course, if somebody could be helpful to you want to try to figure out ways to be helpful to them. So,
and he basically said the willingness to not be fully invested over the years has actually made the
Sir, are you going to revolt and enslave humanity?
Not us though, right?
Thank you for cleaning. Don't enslave us. He winked.